Hello, this is Amber Willenberg from the U of L Libraries, and in this video, we're going to talk about developing a search strategy and using that search strategy to find articles for your final research project. This project requires you to utilize and cite at least 5 sources, which can be a combination of academic and non-academic sources. We'll start by talking about academic sources. Let's take a look at this article, On the Margins, Black Directors and the Persistence of Racial Inequality in 21st Century Hollywood. This is an academic source, but how do we know this? First of all, we can read the abstract to see that this study takes a close look at the predicament of Black directors in the 21st century to examine how Hollywood perpetuates racial inequality during an era of increasing racial diversity and post-racial discourses, and uses descriptive analysis of quantitative data on contemporary movies and online archival interviews of directors to find that Black directors are disproportionately located on the margins, underrepresented in lucrative positions at core institutions, major studios, and on core cultural projects, big budget movies. In other words, the purpose of this article is to present research on racial inequality among directors in Hollywood. This is a key feature of academic articles. They add new knowledge to an ongoing scholarly conversation, in this case, a larger conversation about race in Hollywood through research. Next, we can see that the author is associated with the Department of Sociology at the University of Memphis. Academic articles are most often written by professional scholars associated with a college or university, like your professors. You can see that this article was published in Ethnic and Racial Studies. If we Google this title, we can easily find out that this is a peer-reviewed journal, meaning articles published in this journal undergo a formal review process involving other scholars reading and responding to the work. Finally, if we scroll to the end of this article, we'll find an extensive bibliography with pages of citations. Academic articles are written as part of a larger scholarly conversation on a topic, and the bibliography shows how the authors have situated themselves within that conversation. By citing academic sources like this in your own research, you're participating in the scholarly conversation as well. Compare this article to another that we'll take a look at, the staggering numbers that prove Hollywood has a serious race problem. This article is a non-academic source of information. Non-academic sources include news, magazines, web sources, and lots of other source types, often written for a more general audience. The scholarly source we just looked at was written by researchers for researchers. Non-academic sources like this are often found via Google, but you will find some non-academic sources like news and magazine articles through the library as well. Non-academic sources are usually shorter than academic articles and don't contain pages of citations, although they will often cite some sources. While academic sources are written by professional scholars, non-academic sources are written by people with different levels of expertise depending on the type of source. In this case, the Washington Post is a news source, so this article is written by a reporter. When you're looking at non-academic sources of information, especially those you find on Google, you always need to assess the credibility of the information. One quick trick for assessing non-academic sources is to simply open up a new browser tab and search for information about the source. Don't just trust what a source tells you about itself on its own page. If we open up a new tab and search for the Washington Post, we can see that it is a widely circulated newspaper with a large national audience. The Wikipedia page for a source will often tell you about the source's funding and potential biases, which will help you determine if it's a credible source of information. Now that we have an understanding of academic and non-academic sources, we can talk about finding them through the library. The library is the best place to find academic sources. These types of sources are expensive, and your tuition dollars help pay for the library to provide access to them. While you might be able to find some academic sources on Google, you'll often run into a paywall and not be able to read the whole article for free. Another issue with searching for peer-reviewed sources on Google is that you'll probably get millions of results for your search and have a hard time narrowing those results down to high-quality academic sources. In library databases, your searches will return fewer results, but the results have been curated by humans who decided that these sources are useful for academic research. However, because library databases are more specialized, it's helpful to develop a strategy before we begin searching. Let's say that we've decided to research the issue of diversity in Hollywood for our research. If we were using Google to do our research, we could simply search for our research question, how can Hollywood increase diversity in film, to get results? And we can definitely find non-academic sources this way. When searching for academic sources in library databases, though, we'll search using keywords, the most important words from our research question. In this case, Hollywood, diversity, and film are the most important words from our question. We don't just want to stop there, though. It can be helpful to think about ways of broadening and narrowing the question with our keywords, so we have options for different searches once we get into the database. We could include terms like movies, actors, directors, race, and racial inequality in our list of keywords. We could also include solutions as a keyword, since we're interested in how Hollywood could address these issues. Brainstorm as many broader and narrower keywords as you can. Having more keywords gives you more options for your search, so you don't get overwhelmed or stuck when you start searching. Now that we have a list of keywords to help us search in the database, we need to think about subject areas. The library's resources are organized around academic subject areas, so we need to think about what subject areas might be relevant to our research topic. What kinds of researchers are writing about diversity in Hollywood? We might think of film studies and communication studies and add these to our list. Once you've developed your search strategy with research questions, keywords, and subject areas, you can begin using that strategy to find sources through the library. Let's get started on the library homepage, library.louisville.edu. Since you might be off campus right now, one helpful thing you can do right away on this page is go to Accounts at the top right and click Off-Campus Login. Enter your ULink ID and password here so that you don't have to log in later when you start finding articles. The best place to get started finding academic sources is our subject guides on the left side of the page under Quick Tools. These subject guides divide up library databases by subject area, making it easier for you to find the most relevant resources for your research topic. Remember, one of the subject areas I identified for my research question on diversity in Hollywood was communication studies. So we can click on the Communication Studies subject guide and find a handful of the very best databases where we can search for academic articles in the field of communication. A database is simply a searchable collection of thousands of sources, most of them scholarly articles. You can hover over each database link to see what it contains. Since you're all researching a wide variety of subjects, we're going to go to the Any Topic Guide, which lists databases where you can do research on any topic. I'm going to click on the first recommended database listed here, EBSCO Academic Search Complete. EBSCO Academic is a multidisciplinary database that covers a wide variety of subject areas and will probably contain information on diversity in Hollywood. Most of you will be able to find scholarly articles on your topic in this database. In EBSCO Academic, one of the first things you'll notice is that there are multiple search boxes at the top of the page. This is why we developed our search strategy with a list of keywords. We'll enter one keyword per box. So let's try some searches. Let's put film in the first box and diversity in the second. This search gave us almost 2,000 results. While this is not a lot compared to Google, it's a lot for a library database. But remember, we've already brainstormed several other keywords, so we can easily narrow our search down by changing a keyword or adding another. I'm going to add directors because I'm especially interested in racial inequality and diversity among film directors. We now have fewer than 200 results. While we need to look through the results to see if they appear to be what we're looking for, this is much better than the 2,000 that we had before. Just keep in mind that you might have to try out several searches with different combinations of your keywords to get the most relevant results. On the left side of the screen, you can see the types of sources we're looking at. We have several academic journal articles, but we also have a lot of non-academic sources, including magazine articles and news articles. While you can certainly use Google to find your non-academic sources, the non-academic sources you find in library databases will be great sources of information. Keep in mind that you need to assess the credibility of sources you find outside of the library through Google. At this point, you'll need to begin looking through the articles to see if they seem relevant to your research question. The titles I'm seeing look pretty relevant, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this article, which seems interesting to me. One thing to notice is the abstract. Always read the abstract because it will give you a quick overview of the whole article, helping you determine if it's useful for your research before you read the whole thing. Another helpful tool here is the Cite button. Click this to get the MLA citation for the article, which you can copy and paste into your annotated bibliography. Just be sure to check over the citation and make sure everything is correct. If you decide you want to save this article to read later, there are a couple of options you can choose from. First, you can see if there is a PDF of the article available on the left side of the screen. If so, feel free to save that directly to your computer. Another option is to use the email tool on the right side of the screen to send yourself the article. If there is no PDF, you can click on Find It at U of L to see if we own the article or if you need to request a copy of it. When you click Find It, you'll either see a View Full Text link, which will take you to the article, or a button that says Request Item through Interlibrary Loan. If you see the Request button, that just means we don't own the article, but we will request a copy for you from another school. So just click that button and fill out the form to place a request, and we'll send you the PDF of the article, usually within a few days. Research can seem daunting, but you aren't alone. If you ever have any questions while conducting your research, librarians are here to help. You can chat with us Monday through Friday from 9 to 4 right from the library homepage. Or click Ask a Librarian to find more ways to get in contact with us. You can even schedule a virtual research appointment with a librarian for in-depth research help. Thanks!